Hey guys. Okay, first of all, this is going to be a video about cultivating the plant, the lactuca plant. Well, um, this has to do with farming it. Now, all the plants that we have today, corn, tomatoes, um, all those things were originally wild plants, and then they became farmed. And so it would serve us well to learn to farm the lactuca plants, the wild plants, not hybridize them, not change their essence, leave them wild plants, but in the manner of farming that you bring them close to you, you study their habits, their growth, and then you hone in on that to utilize the plant for your benefit. So, one of the things you can't do, if you want to do that, you can't pull this plant up by its roots. Like any other plant, if you pull the plant up by its roots, you have no more plant. Now, I see a lot of people, I go through a lot of videos on YouTube, and I see a lot of people doing that. Well, they may have access to dozens of plants. They may have acreage and have lots of plants to choose from. And I see them pulling the plant up. Then there's other videos that I see where the plant during its first year of growth, when it's just bushy leaves, that they just go in and chop them all down. And I have seen that successfully done on the non-prickly plants. But on the prickly plants, they don't come back when you do that. So again, you have to learn the species of the plants that you're dealing with, and then you have to decide what you want to do with that plant. So this plant is a biennial, and by that I mean it starts from seed. The seed drop on the ground. The seed cannot be covered. It has to be exposed to light its entire germination process. Then small seedlings start coming up, start growing. And then the first full year of the plant's life, it's a bushy leafy plant. It doesn't set a stalk. Now, I'm going to put this out there in dealing with these plants. I strongly suspect that there is a difference between the prickly and the non-prickly. I think that the non-prickly is a true biennial, and I think that the prickly is a perennial, or rather what we say, a self-sowing annual. That's what I think that the two plants are. But again, finding the information definitively is not out there. You would think with the number of books written on wild plants and the cultivation of wild plants, and just what this particular wild plant, like there's books on oxalis, wood sorrel. There's books on plantain, plantago, the broadleaf plantain. There's books on all kinds of weeds. There's books on pokeweed, on yellow dock, on curly dock, but there's not any on lactuca. And I have searched and searched and searched and searched and searched online, and I can't find one book just on this plant. Now, it's included in several wild plant books, but not one just on it. So that's where it's important that we start making notes, we start observing, and we start sharing that knowledge. So I suspect that the non-prickly is a true biennial, and the prickly is a self-sowing annual. But that is just suspicion. I don't know for sure. Okay. The plant growing over the next year is just going to be leaves only. And during that time, you can harvest. Now, throughout this plant's life, from the time it is a seedling until it reaches its full maturity, the lacticarium and the lactocopricin are in this plant along with many other chemical constituents. But the only time that it's really concentrated is when the stalk is setting and the sap is rising as the stalk pushes up to set flowers. But the chemicals are in the plant the whole time, from the root to right before the little flower tips. Also, the species. At this point now, I have 4 different species. They all act the same. It is proven in those biological studies that all of the lactuca plants do have the same properties. There are some that only grow in Africa. There are some that only grow in Asia. There are some that only grow in Europe. This plant grows all over the world. And as far as the chemical analysis, these plants all have the same chemicals. So you can use them all interchangeably for health and for healing. Now, after that second year of the plant growing and the leaves, we're going to be gathering those leaves. But what you want to always do is you want to, on a plant that is leafy, like in a small bushy sense, you gather the leaves from the outside and you leave the inside alone, because that's where the stalk is going to set from. Now, on the plants that, like the cereola, you can come along and pull those leaves off the stalk. It is never a true bushy plant. The prickly lettuces are not a true bushy plant. Like the non-prickly, these are called bitter lettuces. That they're not like that. But you can go and you can pull those leaves at any stage. Now, what happens is when you pull the leaves, it sets a small stalk. And so from that stalk are more leaves, and then it sets more blooms to then gather more seed from. So that is what we want. I have stressed in a video last year that you want at least 2 plants, because you're going to want to top one. And that keeps all of the chemicals down in the stalk, so that as it puts those little side shoots off, the chemicals are concentrated in there. But one of them, you're going to want to just let it keep going up, and let it have a true full seed head. Now, I have those seed bags that I'm going to be using to collect our seed for this year, because I think that's something that we could do. I don't know if it's feasible or not, but to not only share seed, but then to start cataloging it. When what you want to do is sow your seed every year, so that you get these plants every year. For the ones that are self-sowing annuals, think of it like marigolds, except that you have to let the seed drop and be exposed to light continually. You have to also let it be left outside, because of, I think that the plant is also triggered by humidity levels, temperature variations, and the length of daylight. I think that there has to be a certain length of daylight reached before the seed will germinate. So that's why I don't see the small plants in the winter. But that's why starting in spring, what was it, February or March, that I started seeing the small seeds sprout up? Okay, so it has to start getting a certain length of day and a certain temperature variation. Now, that's just to germinate the seed. That's to get it started. Now, once the small plant starts coming up and you see that, well, that is the time to go dig up that small plant, move it closer to your house, to where you are. If you want to put it in a pot, make sure that the pot is either outside so that it gets that correct amount of sunlight, or you put it in a south-facing window so that it gets the maximum amount of light as the sun goes from east to west. So that's what you want to do if you have to have your plant inside. Now, inside, you're going to want to notate what kind of conditions are optimal. This plant seems to thrive in loose soil, but I have seen it in compacted soil. Uh, it thrives all summer long here in the hot, humid, miserable sauna south, but it also thrives in desert areas and in dry areas. And so I think that again is the species of the plant thrives in certain places. All of my lettuces are the yellow blooming lettuces. There are white blooming lettuces and blue blooming lettuces. Now, I'm not aware of any of those being in this particular geographic area. What I have read is most of those are west of the Mississippi. So you may have those plants there for yourself. Now, one picture that I saw in a book published in the UK was that plant was a lobed leaf prickly lettuce, and it was gray green. Now, it said that that was a Verosa in this book. However, that does not meet the scientific criteria that I am now being able to study on what a Verosa is. But that may have just been an error in that book, or it may have been somebody struggling to find out good information like all the rest of us are. So, once that stalk starts up, and actually, y'all, this is my second video. My camera, the one that it's my Fine Pix, it was my little camera I took to Arizona. I think it has bitten the dust. There's a leak in it, and steam started building up on the lens while I was out here in the heat filming. So I'm redoing this, but I want you to see, okay, you see right there, 30 minutes ago I pulled a leaf. It started out as white sap, turned quickly to creamy sap, and now as it's drying, it's brown. And y'all, I got that brown sap off. I've had to just set aside certain utensils in my kitchen because I can't use them again with anything else. Now I do see something here. This was already starting to put out a stalk. Now, we learned this last year. With some of the plants, the non-prickly, they went ahead and set little, there's one right there. They went ahead and set little stalks. On the cereola, sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. Now, I have to come out and start harvesting some leaves because at the base of these plants is starting to get that kind of rust, that kind of blight. And in reading about that, this is one of the things, like even when you go to get your lettuce in the grocery stores, this is a disease that is specific. I think they call it rust to the lettuce plants. Now, one of the varieties of the wild lettuces does not get that. And now scientists are trying to tamper with stuff and breed it into some plants so that gene splicing so that they can make commercial. And see, you can see that my leaf tips right there are about to start turning on that blight, but I have harvested these in time. As the plant gets higher up, you don't have that problem. I did notice some of those plants by the river last year had quite a bit of it. But as you can see, this sap is pouring out. Now, here's another conversation about whether you should, what they call bleed the plant. It's where you cut a small V and the sap runs out. And I think this was developed in the idea that, like, gathering maple syrup from maple trees or birch syrup, the sap from trees, that's what's done. But you're talking about a tree there that pours forth. That's a maple tree right here next to me. It drips sap, like it'll just ooze it in the time that it's supposed to. But for this plant, you see, it's just a small little trickle. How are you going to feasibly utilize that for any health benefits? Okay, when you can take this whole bunch of leaves where the sap is concentrated in all of those leaves. So those are things that you'll want to decide on what you want to do with your plant. But again, if you're digging your plant up by the roots, you're not going to get any more plants. You're not going to get any flowers, and what you've got when you dig it up is all you get. If you leave it in the ground and farm it, let it grow up, keep pulling leaves, dry those leaves. If you do have a a number of plants and you can pull a couple of them up by the root, then you're not hurting anything. But if you only have one or two plants you've found on your property or you've foraged and you pull it up by the root, well, guess what? That's all you're getting. So what I want to encourage you to do is at least let one plant shoot all the way up, set its own natural head of seed, and collect those seed. Now those seed bonnets you can get through Amazon is where I ordered them. I think I might have paid all of $10 for them, but I am going to be using them. And but then on your other plants, I want you to top them. And you can go back to my videos and see where I chopped the plant. It actually set out stalks, just numerous stalks, just dozens of them. And those had leaves. Those still had plenty of sap in them. And then those did eventually set flowers and seeded. So there's a couple little things that I've pointed out to you to help encourage you to cultivate and farm this lettuce for yourself. And I do want to show you, now this one right here, okay, I'm going to show y'all. Now this one, according to all of the information online, and I have not sent any samples off for cellular analysis, but this one is a canadensis because it says it has an arrow-shaped tip. This one immediately next to it is what I have seen described online as a verosa. This is the plant that I was told by the ag extension officer was a verosa. Of course, now everything's up in the air until I get a definitive answer from a cellular analysis, which I've got to do. I keep clicking on links and it's not taking me to the right place to get the form to fill out and then to send the money so that then I can actually box the plant and send the plant in. So I'm still working on it. But I wanted to show you, I've got just another canadensis, more verosa. I've got the cereola. Now I've seen a, what was it? Is it Vanderbilt? It was one of the colleges, one of the universities, had an article, might have been, yeah, I think it was Vanderbilt, but had a picture of the cereola and from the roots to the top, and it is the one with the serrated edge from the roots to the bottom, not the ones with the lobed leaves that then turn into the serrated. Now I want to touch on real quick as I'm winding up my video. There is cross-pollination. of species. And this can be local. Like if you know how with roses, you can have a red rose by a yellow rose, and if there's a bush in the middle, maybe a few blooms will have some yellow streaks, and maybe they will have a few red streaks on the yellow roses. And I've seen that my whole life. As a matter of fact, my red rose bush here that was here when I got to this house was a scarlet red rose, and it was one of the old roses. They call them, I think they call them tea roses with, or cabbage roses with the big open head, the open face bloom. Well, something happened in the course of those years, and I do have wild roses around me, and neighbors have roses, but then one year, and just one year, it had white stripes in it. Have no clue. Now, this is a rose that has been here since the 40s, so it is not one of the new striped, what they call them, candy cane roses. I despise roses, y'all. I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'm just such a fan of wild plants. I can't. If I'm going to get stuck by something, it's going to be medicine for me. Now, on that subject, you can eat roses. You can eat rose petals. You can eat rose heads. You can eat rose hips. And you can eat rose leaves. And you can use them medicinally and nutritionally. So always remember that if there's an apocalypse. Now, some of this stuff that I started preparing for was based out of not only poverty, but the idea that now that I'm in the city, you know, when my utility services go down, and I don't have an option being in the city. Now, back on the farm, I had plenty of options. But here, I had to learn, well, in a emergency situation, what could I use for food or medicine? Because we have a river that goes through the city and one bridge, and all of the markets and stuff are on the other side. Now, we do have two small grocery stores on my side of the river, but half the city lives on my side, and it would be gone. Stuff would be gone. You know, in the South, they say it's going to snow 1 inch. You can't find anything. You can't find water. Can't find milk. I don't drink milk anyway. You can't find bread. I rarely eat bread, but I mean, you canned goods. You can't find stuff like that. So imagine if in those situations, like I know up north, y'all have blizzards, and you need to be aware of what things, even in wintertime, could you utilize and forage, because there are plants that live through snow and frost and ice. So it looks like there's going to be a storm coming up, so I'm going to wrap this up, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to show y'all a view. Now, mullein, again, is a biennial. I expect, because I dug up all these plants from very, very, very small plants, I expect every single one of these will stay just like this for about a year or more. And now that we've got them on video, we're going to learn about this together. So, these plants will be ones that I will pull leaves off of, and I already have, and they come right back. I cut this one the other day, and that all of these, I left the center leaf, the center basal rosette, and I cut all the leaves around. And now they just come back with a gusto. And of course you can see there's some pokeweed in there. I dug up as much of that as I could. Y'all, we'll have another conversation about pokeweed, but I'm going to stop right there. And I did want to show you this because I did show it in the other video that I had to trash. But this right here is called a mock strawberry. And you can see that its leaves are like strawberries and its little fruit is like a strawberry. It is edible, it is safe, and it is nutritional. And I'm eating it. right now. And I do. I forage off of these in my yard all the time. They're delicious little things. And they grow low down in the ground cover and stuff. So until next video, I want y'all to work on a plan of what you want to do with your plants. All the ones that I sent out this year, I'm hoping some of them were veroses. I feel like most of them were probably cereola, because that is what I have seen coming up at that particular time. I do have more coming up, but utilize these plants to grow again next year. But we're going to be learning these together, and I'm going to keep researching. So until next video, remember to eat the wild things.